My name is Stephen Lisk. My company is Lisk Landscape Innovations. We specialize in stormwater management, and I am a hardscaper.
What's happening, hardscapers? This is episode 215 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, we have another I Am a Hardscaper interview, where we sit down with a hardscape business owner and do a deep dive into their business. And today we're joined by Stephen Lisk. He is the owner of Lisk Landscape Innovations. You can find him on Instagram at Stephen Lisk. That's StephenLisk. And before we get into the episode, we want to say thank you to our sponsors, Inlight Outdoor Lighting. If you're looking for low voltage outdoor lighting to add to your hardscaping business, reach out to them at Inlight Design. That's INLITE Design on Instagram to get that conversation started, as well as Cycle CPA. If you need bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for $200 off their services there. And GPS Track It. If you are looking for GPS tracking in your hardscaping business, reach out to gpstrackit.com/howtohardscape to get that conversation started. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right, Stephen, let's get to know a little bit more about you yourself, how you got started in this industry. Do you want to give our audience a little bit of context as to your beginnings and what got you started with your business?
Yeah, I would say I got started when I was a young kid, about 12, 13 years old. My dad at that time, he kind of give me a little push to get out there and start my own business. And it wasn't traditional. I didn't, get that job at Papa John's or Burger King or whatever. And, I got letters. My grandfather created letters and we mailed them out. And, it started with 5 lawns, 10 lawns. Before you know it, I had 50. And that's how I got started.
Interesting. So you started in the lawn care business and
Yes.
sort of scaled that up. How was that? And do you still own and operate the lawn care division?
So, yeah, I don't, I sold that out back in 2010. Just at that time, it was trying to juggle landscape construction and lawn cutting was a little bit too much. And we just really wanted to specialize in something. So yeah.
What was the draw towards landscape construction and as opposed to continuing to scale that lawn care business?
I think being creative, so I had initially, after I got in, I had rolled into 1 year of college, community college, and I instantly didn't know what I wanted to do. So I kind of dropped out of that, and I seen something at vocational school for, it was landscape and hardscape design. And I enrolled, and it was 2 of my best friends at the time. And we did 3 years of that. And right from that, we were hooked, all 3 of us. We had 2 excellent teachers at that time, and they both really just mentored us through that entire process. And hardscaping was just starting to blow up. I'm 40 now. That was back when I was like 19 years old. So 21 years ago, it was really starting to get big. Outdoor living wasn't really anything back then. Everything was called a patio at that point. But just being really creative, really wanted me to quit my current job and take that next step.
Right. That's interesting that a college near you actually offered the whole hardscape. That's tough to find, at least where I am, and it's not really promoted anywhere. Did you already know you wanted to take that based on your business, like lawn care, and wanting to experience like hardscape? Is that how you learned about it, or what was
I did. It's actually a trade school, and I can't remember exactly how I got connected. If I was if I was looking up in the newspaper at that time or wherever, or maybe my mother or my father. But yeah, I mean, that's, I loved the lawn cutting so much at the time, but I knew I wanted to get into something that was a little bit more fulfilling, and planning and all that was always kind of a passion, and being creative and being artistic, even back in high school. And I didn't want to quite go to college for that at the time. And I don't think anything was local in the local colleges. You had to go away. Delaware Valley in, I believe it's Doylestown, PA, around here was super popular, but I didn't have the time nor the money at that time. So I thought this was a great opportunity for me to work during the day, and then 10, it was night school from 4, I believe it was 3:30 or 4 o'clock to 7:30 to really further my education. And I got so much out of it at that time.
Let's pick apart the education, because what was that like? Was it primarily installation based, or did you get sort of the estimating basics in there as well? Like, what was that course like?
So most of it, I would tell you, started with planting and landscaping and identifying plants and botanical names. And that was the main part of it. We actually had two different teachers. So we had a horticulturist teacher, and then we had somebody who had his own business, hardscape business, and they would alternate days. So it was a good balance. And the hardscape teacher was phenomenal because he really taught us the ins and outs. I don't think we could have started the business without him at that time, because we just, we didn't really know anything, and he really kind of got us motivated to get out there. And, we've already doing landscape, small plantings and mulching, but that kind of catapult us to at least get started doing small things, walkway or maybe a little garden wall. So that was really big back then.
So then what's that jumping off point like, where you sell the lawn care business and you transition to landscape construction? Was this a difficult thing to do, or did you already have clients lined up and ready to roll for that landscape construction? Or was there a transition phase there?
It was a little nerve-wracking because you have to think you're only as good as your next job. So that's the one thing about the lawn care is that, that's a routine, right? Everybody gets cut every 7 to 10 days. Whereas like you got to scramble and you got to hope that people are always going to buy. So it was nerve wracking, but it was the time. I thought about, if it weren't to work then I would have to find a different career. I said, look, this is my passion. If this is not going to work, and if we can't maintain consistent sales and do this, then I guess it's not going to work out. But I was happy at the time. I mean, I can remember the meeting that I had with the person who was purchasing it, and I was happy for him. And it was a really good, smooth transition. Clients were okay with it. He did a really good job of maintaining those clients, because, sometimes that transition is not the greatest, and everybody, wants us back. But if they needed anything, all they had to do was call me, for anything. But happy we made the move, and we just had to move on. So,
and then, so did you operate your business during the, say, 2008 downturn in the economy, or was this afterwards?
Yeah, the 2008 economy was a nightmare. It was really, 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 really hard. And as a matter of fact, I questioned whether or not this was the business I was going to be in 5, 10, 20 years. I remember the long conversations we had, just because everybody was scaling back and everybody was fighting for the work. And again, back then there was no really, there was outdoor living maybe in the lucrative areas, right? Like for us, lucrative is like maybe North Jersey, certain parts of Pennsylvania, but where we're at, people are not spending $1 million on hardscapes, especially back then, because they didn't value it like they valued other trades, say like carpentry work, right? About that. So, it was tough getting through it. We got through it. And I think that's when the transition began, where I got into water management. I thought, people need this done. It's a big problem, and there's not really an option, right? Whereas landscape is, that's a want more than a need. People are going to wait, they're going to stall, and they kind of got you by the negotiation wise. Whereas the other part of the business with stormwater management, that always had to go. People had to get it done. So that really probably changed the game for us in that window, 2008, 9, 10.
I've noticed this year so far, a larger percentage of my leads are actually drainage work, where somebody's got a problem in their yard. Is that what your company takes on? Is that what you saw back then, where you were taking on these water management projects? And are you seeing something similar this season at least?
Yeah, back then it was I think I had to push for the work a little bit harder. Um, I have a little bit of skill set in keyword research back at that time because there was no Facebook or Instagram to lean back on, right? Everything was the phone book or, it was internet search. And I spent a lot of money on my website at that time, to really help that. We had that conversation. How do we get the phone to ring, right? I forget back then, I think I dropped $7,000, which is a drop in the bucket compared to what I dropped a year or two ago. So basically, trying to figure out back then, you do a job, maybe you do it for not that much, and then you advertise it. And I used to post a lot of YouTube videos and create them on my website. I tweaked the keywords, and I've kind of got up in the ranks to number one and number two. And that became like a big part of her business at a certain point. I think in the mid 2014, 2015, 2016, we weren't really doing any hardscape work, barely any, maybe a couple of jobs per year. But we were fortunate because the weather patterns had changed and we were just getting killed with rain on a consistent basis. And I really liked the business. I got from, just kind of being up in the air about it versus it was becoming a real passion because it was critical thinking, right? You were always trying to figure things out and new things. And so that's kind of how it came about.
And then, so today, what does the business look like in terms of types of projects you take on, percentage wise, or also like size of the business? Where are you guys at?
I think it's like a little bit of a balance now. It's like a hybrid business almost, because I always was passionate about the hardscape and construction and masonry. So I basically took the businesses and combined them. So most of these jobs we're doing now are, they're getting larger and larger each year, but so many of them have, some of them have wetlands, some of them, they have serious water issues. They're all water related. Most people come and they always have some sort of water issue, but it's certainly a hybrid business with permeable pavers and wetlands that we need to delineate with our engineers. And prior to that, with soil testing and grading plans, and some of that stuff starts 6 months to a year out. And because of that, I actually had recently enlisted and got accepted at Rowan University for their construction management program, because I can see where the business is going, and I feel like I can really use that additional knowledge.
Nice. So where is that going to take you, if you don't mind me asking that?
You know what? I don't know. I think I feel like this industry keeps evolving, and outdoor living is massive. We know that everybody wants to be outside, especially after COVID. And that really ignited the fire for everybody. But I don't know. I mean, gee, at a certain point, I'm like, we're going to start building houses here. Who the heck knows? But no, I think that I'm going to stay within my lane and keep doing what we're doing with stormwater management and having this hybrid model right now, and we're loving it. I think we just maintain the course, and whatever's thrown at us, we'll just try to figure it out. But loving everything at this point, and I guess we'll see where it goes, right?
Yeah. And Stephen, where does the eye for design come from? And you first came on my radar like a couple of years ago now. You had some really cool jobs with Antica, I believe it was, and just like scrolling through your Instagram feed, lots of cool designs. But where does that come from for you? Is that just experience over time and seeing different products and wanting to mix and match, or have you always kind of had this, and this is why you got into the landscape construction?
Sure. I got to give a lot of credit to our landscape architects that we work with. We have a couple that we really work with. But I think we work all together, and, I'm really meticulous about the design, and I've always have been since I've started the company. So between me and between the landscape architects, I guess we all have that artistic touch, and I think we all complement one another really well. And I can bring that stormwater management background to kind of make everything function, right? Because that's the end of the day. Like, it looks beautiful, but it's got to last, and it's got to function, right? So So yeah, a little bit of everybody over time. And I probably get that from maybe my mom and my dad. They're both pretty artistic.
And then just for those wanting to create a relationship with a landscape architect, how did you go about that? And how did you kind of foster that relationship to help you? Is it them also giving you some leads, or is it more so you coming to them for the design? And how did you foster that relationship?
Yeah. So, well, I used to have somebody in house years ago, and um, and as of late, like there's been so much availability on Instagram and Facebook like there never has before. So between that and between I use a subcontracting service online called upwork.com, and you can almost find any subcontractor you want around the country. I mean, there's so much talent out there. There really is. I mean, but we have 2 or 3 landscape architects that we're really happy with right now. And yeah, there's no reason to change. But if anybody's trying to go out and start a business now, back 20 years ago, you couldn't do that. You'd have to. Again, I used to do it all myself. I used to hand draw. Started mechanical drawing class in high school, and I used to hand draw everything, right? And that's the way it started. You didn't do anything on the computer. All this 3D technology is incredible. And it's such an easy sales tool. I mean, you put something in front of somebody's face and, what is there not to like about that? Whereas if you have conceptual plan drawings, it's a little bit more difficult to envision that. I can see it, you can probably see it, but most are unable to see that. So we're spoiled nowadays. We're very spoiled.
You work hard to build a successful business, and because of this, it is important to work with companies that you can trust, rely on, and whose missions are to give you the highest quality product and customer support. Low voltage outdoor lighting is one of the easiest ways for you to grow your business and increase revenue. Using lighting can make you more profit, add that wow factor, and make your business stand out. Whether you are already using outdoor lighting in your hardscape projects or not, it's time you check out InLight Outdoor Lighting. As a professional hardscaper, we know that you need efficient installs, less callbacks, and premium products to have a successful and growing business. InLight's got you covered. They've created some of the most premium and unique lighting on the market to make your project stand out and wow your clients with their unmatched light quality. It gets better. InLight has an unbeatable customer support team, provides many educational resources like online and in-person training, installation videos, and so much more. They care about your business growth and will be with you every step of the way. For more information on how InLight can help you grow your business, check them out on Instagram at InLight Design. That's at INLITE Design on Instagram. DM them to find out how to put more money in your pocket this season. Now back to the podcast. Okay, so getting into a leads and a client calls you or texts you, emails you, where do you take that from there? How do you start that conversation? Are you pre-qualifying right away on that initial phone call? Yeah, what does that initial kind of communication look like when a client reaches out to you?
That's been the tough one over the years. And I think the end goal, at the end of the day, is not to, time is valuable. You can't be chasing leads that are dead leads, and your time is valuable. And I probably started charging consultation fees almost 10 years ago now. And that was mainly for drainage, and I think I had charged $65 or $75 back then. Just something a little bit for our time, because otherwise I was getting 8 to 10 leads a day. I just couldn't go on, and I just wanted to see who was serious. I was always willing to spend the time on the phone with them. But to drive out to each one of these people with your own personal gas and all that and write up a quote. So I eliminated that. And so now we have it down, whereas if they email or if they call in, we take the call. My personal assistant accepts that, gets that, and we have pre-written scripts that they're automatically emailed. So an initial phone call is set up, right? First, about 15-minute phone call, just to see if I can give them an idea or a ballpark, right? of it, because some people, like, look, they're not prepared to spend 50 grand. They're just not. Um, and if that's the case, then, we just didn't waste either one of our time. So I think it's good. And and by the end of that conversation, most people are very, very comfortable by basically set them a consultation fee. So it's $250 for an on-site evaluation. It's credited towards the cost of the job. And most of those, I would say at least 50% of those convert, because normally I try to give them some sort of ballpark number, and I'll even, open up, they send me photos. So I review everything that they have, and I even pull up some of their stuff online, and I can usually troubleshoot what they have right there and then. So they're very comfortable by usually paying that $250 consultation fee. So it's not like they're calling the office and we're saying, hey, it's $250. And they're like, for what? Like, what am I getting? So I think building the trust is the most important thing with the client. And it's just going to save you so much time and make it become a lot more efficient.
That's quite an early time to adopt the consultation fee. What was it like in your market? Was it something that nobody else was doing, or was this something that, it was more like a stormwater management company to charge a consultation fee, so people were used to it? Was there any pushback from clients? What was
A
that
little
like?
bit of both. Yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit of both. Definitely getting pushed. Some people were like, look, I totally understand. And they paid it. But there was a lot of people that would get mad. And, I tried to spend as much time as I could to give them a little bit of value ahead of time. But, you know, I you have to separate the people. Time is valuable. You got to be paid for your time. But it was very hard back then. But I think a majority of the people understand it, because it was a little bit different than hardscape landscape. Like, I don't usually charge for those consults. Like, if they call in, I will give them the process, and I have a whole packet and process that I can provide to them ahead of time, and then they'll know what they're going to spend. So to engage us, they know they're going to have to pay X amount of dollars for a design, right? So I'll usually meet them with them for free, because otherwise I can't really get the ball rolling for the project. I can give them ballpark pricing. Hey, this is going to be between $50,000 and $75,000, or this is going to be between $100,000 and $150,000. Here are the fees associated with that. You're going to have a building architect. You have the landscape architect, right? You have the civil engineer. Maybe we have a structural engineer, possibly. So you can give them all them costs, and at that point in time, they'll let you know if they want to meet you on site. So it saves a whole lot of time. It's a lot of stuff that we can just do on the phone rather than meeting in person, where you're essentially doing the same thing.
Right. Right. And then leads. We talked about how you focus on keywords and you're ranking pretty high back then in your business. Nowadays, do you still rely on that to bring in leads, or have you branched out? I know, do you get leads coming from your Instagram? Where are all your leads coming from, essentially?
Yeah, I would tell you it's a little bit of both. I think they find us on like Facebook forums and elsewhere. And then they start to follow us, and then they start following us, whatever, 3 to 6 months, and they eventually reach out, or they eventually want to purchase. It's because, 5 years ago, I would say it was 70% online search, 30% social media, and then it became 50-50. But I think social media is starting to kind of overtake that, right? Not that people are not searching online, but I think that so many people are more comfortable with finding contractors on Instagram and Facebook, and it's just becoming the future, and you still got to invest in your website a little bit, because I don't think your social media page has enough on there sometimes. And I think that, you can really build your website out for the most part and really educate your clientele on the website. So it's still always good to have that website storefront. But if they want to continue to watch you day in and day out, social media, I mean, people get up in the morning, right, drink their coffee, and they open their browser, and when you're feeding that information to them on a nonstop basis, I think you're giving them that trust factor that, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. So most people come to us, I don't have to sell them. They kind of see what we do and they almost know what they want. So that's a good part about social media, that, again, you had to bring a portfolio book out to a clientele 20 years ago because they don't know you from anyone else.
With that, do you find there's a percentage of certain types of leads coming better from different sources? For example, like Instagram, you find that you're getting better leads than you are from your website directly or from other avenues. Do you find that there's a better, higher quality of leads coming from different avenues?
I think it's a balance all around. I don't think there's, I hear guys now, they're getting leads on TikTok. I'm not heavily into TikTok. It's just so much social media. I mean, I don't want to be, and that's the other part. Like, I don't want to be living on social media constantly. Which, right now I do a lot of the posting, but I also have that somebody that they help assist with the videos, but it's a lot of work. Consistently, and I feel like you have to do a little bit of it yourself, just because it's more personal, and there's the only person that knows it in your business, or somebody that works in the business. So yeah, I think that the leads through it, like, I think they're, I think 5 years from now that might very well change. I would tell you it might be all of social media, and websites might be somewhat obsolete.
When you schedule that initial consultation, what happens on that initial consultation? What are you bringing with you? Are you bringing anything with you? Or what kind of questions are you asking that client to see what might go into that space, what might not go into that space? And are you asking any questions to learn a little bit more about the client? What happens on that initial consultation for you?
Well, like I said, on the phone call, I think we talk about a lot. Sometimes these phone calls could go 30 to 45 minutes long if they're really about landscape construction. So I send them a formal email with my proposal, with all my subs, engineers, landscape architects. And when they do engage us, and then I go out there, we'll walk through, because we still want to walk through, and I still want them to tell me, like, what are your goals, right? What type of materials are you looking to use? Obviously, stormwater management is always like a big thing. What we're going to need to do address that. It's really the basics, right? When you go out there, and then at that point, I think they give you a little bit of leeway to say, like, look, hey, Steve, I'm trusting you. So I go out there, I take some brief, couple measurements, right? Property survey mostly tells you everything. I take video, I take photos, and then I have them always send me inspiration, because I really think that helps us guide it and almost nail it the very first time. So most of the time, they're going to send me anywhere from 10 to 20 photos of what things that they have seen on the internet that they really, really, really love. And that helps guide us. It's just to kind of stay on track, because, you don't want to go through all of that work of designing something and then you're just off, you got to design it. So that's really helped us out, is having them send them some inspiration so we're all on the same page.
I like that idea. And do most people follow through with that? Have you had any friction in that process, or do most people kind of know where to find that inspiration and send it off to you?
No, everybody's pretty great about it. Nobody's really pushing back because they're so excited about the project.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're like, oh, I got to do this. It's, hey, like, look, we're going to make a killer space in the backyard. Like, if you can just, they don't have to send me 10 to 20 photos. I can just run with it. But they send me 1, 2, or 3. That's fine. But half of them are just blown away. And there's always tweaks. I got a client now, we're making a couple of tweaks. We're always 75 to 80 on point, and there's might be adjustments with the outdoor grilling station or the pavilion, or the size of the pavilion, or the colors of it. The big part is you want to make sure they're not exceeding impervious coverage. I don't know if that's a big thing in your area. a lot of these lots are small that we're working in. So it depends. Some of them are 32, 35%, 40%. And if you exceed that, you have to go through a whole variance, and it's just a pain in the butt. So they're the big things to stay with, and we want to make sure we're in line and we're not building this whole space that it's not really what they're looking for, or it doesn't comply with the township requirements.
I just want to take a break from today's episode to talk about our sponsor, Cycle CPA. You may have a CRM or project management software in place, but what data are you using to ensure your estimating is accurate? Having a proper accounting setup and accurate bookkeeping done is key to understanding overhead expenses and other costs that must be recouped in your estimates. Cycle CPA is a remote bookkeeping and CFO firm that helps to connect the dots from the financial reports to the hardscape and landscape data needed in order to reach high profits. They provide landscape and hardscape industry benchmarking, job costing financials by service line, advisory meetings, and much more. Cycle CPA's team of accountants are specialized within the hardscape and landscape industry, and you can visit them at cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. Sorry, I had multiple questions just pop up in my head there from what you said, and now I've got my brain scrambled a bit. I like the idea of the client sending you inspiration. I don't know why I haven't done that. Usually I ask questions, then I send them photos based on what they're asking, but I feel like that would get them really excited, right? If they're going out, finding the inspiration and getting them really jazzed up to get their space done by you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's big. I think that otherwise, I mean, we always pretty much nail it, but I think if we're kind of on the same page, like, let me give an example. I had one client, he really sent me, my goodness, probably 100 photos, which I'm like, all right, that's a lot. Well, it's good though. And, we got all of them and we collaborated, and the architect got back to me. He's like, look, sent him this mock up on SketchUp, and what do you think? And we on, I said, I think it's awesome. I think he's going to love it. So we finished it up, and the customer just emailed me back like instantly, like, you pretty much nailed everything that I had right from the bat. And that's why it's important, because otherwise we might not have designed something like that, right? And it's not a big deal if we have to go back to the drawing board, but I think it just saves everybody a little bit of time, maybe that inspiration.
I feel like it gives them a little bit more, like they feel like they're collaborating with you, right? And it gives them a little bit more ownership of what's going on.
All about the process, make it fun and interesting. It doesn't got to be, and that's the thing. Like, I think people, if they're going to be spending this much money, you want to make it a fun process from beginning to start. Involve them.
I remember the question I was going to ask based on lot size. You're saying smaller lots. Does that mean you're dealing with tighter access projects quite often if you're going into the backyard, or what does that look like for you?
Oh yeah, our access. I wish I had, some of these jobs on Insta. I see people working with, acre lots, and you're able to bring in a 5 or 6 ton excavator and just rip, But a lot of our stuff is small. The gates are, 36-inch gates. I mean, we can take parts of the fence down, but some of the equipment, bigger stuff, would be more of a hassle to be in that backyard, and it wouldn't be efficient. It's a lot. You probably see our stuff. We got the Ditch Witch, the SK 1050. That's been an incredible machine the last 6 or 7 years. We bought our mini excavator back in the pandemic. That's been great. I was going back and forth about a bigger machine and a smaller machine. I think it's right in the middle. It does everything and anything. If we need to excavate and do French drains and drainage, no problem. We can throw it on a trailer with our mini skid, no problem. If we need to do a larger hardscape construction, and I mean larger, I don't know, maybe 1,000 square feet, and that's really not that large. It's great. You can just do everything and anything with it. So a lot of our equipment is compact. I thought about purchasing bigger, larger equipment. Honestly, we have a Caterpillar 249D, and then we barely ever use it. We have it to move pallets and do a couple of things, but it sits more than anything. And we had thought about maybe getting rid of that and buying another ditch witch, which I think we're going to. That's at least for our jobs. I mean, if you have wide open access, then it probably doesn't make sense. But, the goal is to minimize the manual labor, right? To be efficient, to not kill your guys out there. And, I think that's the goal. So.
We'll definitely get back to talking about equipment a little bit more, but when you do sign up a client to a project, what does your payment structure typically look like? Do you have a set payment plan that you set people up on, like a down payment percentage, progress payments, and then end payment? What do you leave for the end payment percentage? Or does it vary from project to project for you?
Yeah, anything under like $10,000 or $15,000, I'll usually do 50% down, and then 50% upon completion, because we're going to get done the job pretty quick, whether that's a couple of days, 2-3 days. But larger projects, anything over 20 or 25K, we'll usually break it down into thirds or quarters. Always 25% down, and then usually another 25% upon, 14 days prior to project start date. And then we'll do another payment, 25% midpoint, project midpoint. And then we'll usually sometimes we break up the last two payments depending on the size of the job, but usually it's 25% upon completion.
So then my next question, usually people have answers regarding payments for this one, but my next question is a horror story that you've experienced in business there. The reason why I asked this is just to help those just starting out or wanting to get into contracting, what can and possibly could happen, whether that's something that happened on a job site, whether that's something dealing with a client or getting payment. But Stephen, do you have a horror story in your time in business that you'd want to share?
I don't think any horror stories. I think there's little things to learn, though, right? I mean, you make mistakes. I mean, I think your contract's so important, right? You need to get an attorney to draft your contract and be very specific. But I think if you don't have a clear-cut contract, you're going to run into a lot of problems, whether that's change orders or just misunderstandings about scope of work. You want to avoid that, but no major ones. It's all been things that were misunderstood, whether it be the contract, and we've cleaned that up over the years. And we really haven't had any issues because anything, we're very transparent up front, or I'm up front with mostly everybody. And if there's a change order, I have a client signed it. First we stop the work, we talk about it. And then we basically, I'll draw an updated proposal and I'll add it. And usually we're all on the same page. But, years ago, when you kind of fly by the seat of your pants, maybe 15 years ago, and you don't have all that language in there, there's a lot that could go wrong. There's a real lot that could go wrong, as you know. But now I don't have anything major. I'm real lucky about that. But, I would say to avoid those major issues, get your contract up to date.
Can I ask you, what's the biggest thing you've added to your contract over the years, or something that's come up on potentially with a client or on the job site that made you add it to the contract, or something that you've heard online from somebody that you wanted to add to the contract?
Yeah, I mean, change orders are always one of the big things. You always try to avoid being upfront and honest with people from the get-go, but there's just sometimes you don't know what things that you're going to run with, whether they're unforeseen. So I'll try to go through that with the client ahead of time before we start it, and saying, hey, look, we're going, I don't know what's going to be down there when we dig down. We might have to, let me give you an example, waterproof the foundation wall. But be prepared. There might be a cost, and the cost might be between this and this. So I'll always give them a heads up ahead of time. So it's not like I get out there, oh, surprise, now you have to spend more money, because I don't like making people feel uncomfortable. And I want them to feel very comfortable when they're walking into this process. So I think that's the key to avoid it. And with our drainage business, there's been a lot of things that could arise, because hardscape and landscaping are really straightforward, right? You do the work, you're done. With water management, there's a lot of things that you have to look at with unforeseen rain events, hurricanes. A lot of that stuff was added over time. So yeah, it's get your attorney involved.
Yes, absolutely. And I like to ask this question to everybody that comes on, and feel free to take it wherever you want. We've already kind of touched on it with equipment there, but do you have any equipment tool purchases that you've made recently or in the past that have really changed your business, or tools and equipment purchases that you're going to make in the near future that has really changed your business, or expanding upon that, installation practices that you live by that you really love on site? Anything that you want to talk about there, equipment, installation practices related?
Yeah, so I would tell you, I wish I bought it 10 years ago, but it was a Jeremy from J Square. I found him probably maybe 3, 4 years ago, and I seen that he was using the Canicom buggy, and I'm like, oh my god, that's a swivel buggy! How incredible is that? I got to have that. So that's been a big game changer because I think that it has eliminated wheelbarrows for most projects. Um, Super efficient. You can hold maybe 4 or 5 wheelbarrows worth just in that one. That's a huge purchase. I would tell anybody getting in business, if they can afford it and they have the money, that's a must-have purchase. Um, I've been wanting a tilt rotator over time. I don't know if I want to put it on the machine that I have right now, just because it's so very expensive. I think I would probably upgrade to something a little bit larger. Haven't used one before. That looks like it could be pretty amazing and eliminate, um, a lot. You're going to be able to get into areas that you just cannot get in with a typical Mini X. They're the two. They're the two that I would say. Well, at least the one purchase that I own right now, but the one potentially that I do want to own in the future. And that's about it. I mean, I think we mostly have everything else that we need for the jobs. So yeah.
I want to interrupt this episode to talk to you about GPS Track It. When it comes to running a landscaping business, the question isn't what do you do, but what don't you do? If it's not a customer that needs your attention, it's one of your drivers or one of your vehicles. But you already know that GPS Track It exists to help you know more than what you already know, like the most efficient routes to maximize your service potential, like whether or not your vehicles and crews are where they're supposed to be, like how to save unnecessary fuel costs and other costs. And we're going to be covering the benefits of GPS tracking in the future on this podcast. So we're going to continue with the benefits of GPS tracking, but we'll let our fleet advisors give you the full picture. Call 866-693-1291 or go to gpstrackit.com/how-to-hardscape. Once again, that's 866-693-1291 or go to gpstrackit.com/how-to-hardscape. Link will be in the show notes. Anybody that you've looked to that you want to give a shout out here on the podcast, whether that's inspiration, whether that's mentorship, but online, offline, but anybody here that you want to give a shout out on the podcast?
I mean, there's so many good contractors out there. There's so many. I mean, all of them. Like, we all follow each other. I mean, J Square. There's, so you mentioned earlier, RC Outdoor. He does some pretty awesome stuff. I mean, Evan from Pride Hardscape is really good. You got Picture Lake Landscaping is really good. Niagara. Him and I actually met up like 3 months ago. He came to one of our job sites. It was kind of pretty cool. But you got Hart's Landscape. They're up in North Jersey. But yeah, there's so many talented guys out there. And and the biggest shout out I'd like to give is to my father. He's been a heck of a mentor over the years, and without him, I don't know where I would be. It's the little things, and when you get jammed up or you don't know what to do, he's always there for me. So definitely shout out to Dad.
Awesome. And one last question for you, Stephen, as we wrap up here, but it's a big one. What is one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the very beginning? This could be personal related. This could be business related, whatever direction you want to take that. But what's one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the very beginning?
The biggest thing I know now is I would get into school, get into college right off the bat. But again, when I was 17, 18, 19 years old, I didn't really quite know where this business was going to go. So I would tell anybody who's looking to get into this business, get into school, maybe get get a construction management degree or landscape architecture or engineering degree. I think that's really going to help them grow their business, advance it, or work for somebody. I think that's the biggest thing is education is everything. Without the education, the business is just not going to thrive.
Right. Would you recommend going to work for somebody first to see if they actually enjoy the work and then start to pursue the education around that, or get some sort of degree, like you said, construction management, which can help them pursue multiple different paths within construction? What kind of advice would you give to somebody not quite knowing what they want to do in their future?
Yeah, it all depends. I have friends that are successful both ways. I have friends that went and got their degree in construction management and worked for somebody for years, being a construction manager. Actually, my cousin, he's has a degree from Temple construction management, and he's now just started his own business building homes. Shout out to Ted McHugh. And I have another best friend. He's really, really successful. He did the same thing. He went to college, was working for a couple of different companies, and he's killing it now. I mean, it's a $200 million company. Or again, like I had started, I was kind of working on my own, right? And going to school. But I do think if I had to do it over again, I would absolutely get in school first, maybe work for somebody or maybe start your own business. It's all how you're feeling really at that time. Owning a business is a lot of work. I feel like if I did go to college back then, I probably would have worked for somebody for the first 5 years at least, because I think you cut out a lot of that stuff that takes you so much. Like, you eventually learn it, but it takes a lot longer to learn it versus, you kind of got that crash course with college, and then you're working for a bigger firm, which they're going to cover basically everything probably in that first 5 years. So I think it does give you a jump start, a little bit of a jump start. But look, I mean, it worked out. But if I had to do it over again, that's what I would do.
Steven, thank you so much for the time to do this interview. I appreciate it. Where can our audience go to find out more about you? Any closing comments, remarks that you want to make? But where can our audience find out more about you?
They can go on my website is www.lisklandscape.com. My Instagram page at Steven Lisk. Also on Facebook. And yeah, if they want to visit any of those sites or call our office, that's where they can find us.
And that's spelled STEPHENLISK. Steven, Thank you so much for your time today.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you to Steven for joining us for that episode. Reach out to him on Instagram at Steven Lisk. That's STEPHENLISK. And thank you to our sponsors, Inlight Outdoor Lighting. If you're looking to add lighting to your hardscaping business, reach out to Inlight Design. That's INLITE Design on Instagram to get that conversation started, as well as GPS tracking with GPS Track It on Instagram, and bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services with Cycle CPA at Cycle CPA on Instagram, and let them know How to Hardscape sent you for $200 off those services there. And we are always looking for ratings and reviews on this podcast, because that really helps us get this podcast out there to get more great guests on this show as well. So on Apple Podcasts, you can leave a rating and a written review. I'll get to reading those reviews on future episodes. And on Spotify, you can just tap a couple of times and leave a 5-star review there as well. So thank you for doing that if you've already done so. And if not, that really does help us if you would be willing to do that there. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.